Greetings everyone, this is Aura Nightingale. Today, we're going to learn about the fundamentals of nursing. Unit 1, the nature of nursing. And in this unit, we're going to tackle about Chapter 1, historical and contemporary nursing practice. This book from Kosher and Herb will be our main reference. It is the summary of the Unit 1, the nature of nursing. And for today's video, we're going to focus on the historical and contemporary nursing practice, introduction, and historical perspectives. Okay, introduction. Nursing today is far different from nursing as it was practiced years ago, and is expected to continue changing during the 21st century. To comprehend present-day nursing and at the same time prepare for the future, one must understand not only past events but also contemporary nursing practice and the sociologic and historical factors that affect it. Historical perspective. This section highlights only selected aspects of events that have influenced nursing practice, specifically on women's roles, religion, war, societal attitudes, nursing leaders, and men in nursing. Traditional female roles of wife, mother, daughter, and sister have always included the care and nurturing of other family members. Generally, the care provided was related to physical maintenance and comfort. Thus, the traditional nursing role has always entailed humanistic caring, nurturing, comforting, and supporting. Although many of the world's religions encouraged benevolence, it was the Christian value of love thy neighbor as thyself and Christ's parable of the Good Samaritan that had a significant impact on the development of Western nursing. During the 3rd and 4th centuries, several wealthy matrons of the Roman Empire, such as Fabiola, converted to Christianity and used their wealth to provide houses of care and healing, the forerunner of hospitals. For the poor, the sick, and the homeless, women were not, however, the sole providers of nursing services. These are the knights who provided nursing care to sick and injured comrades, and also built hospital which became the standards of management for the sick. The Crusades saw the formation of several orders of knights, including the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, also known as the Knights Hospitallers, the Teutonic Knights, and the Knights of St. Lazarus. The Crusades were a series of military campaigns organized by popes and Christian Western powers to take Jerusalem and the Holy Land back from Muslim control, and then defend those gains. There were 8 major official crusades between 1095 and 1270, as well as many more of unofficial ones. The Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, commonly known as the Knights Hospitaller, was a medieval and early modern Catholic military order. It was headquartered in the Kingdom of Jerusalem until 1291, on the island of Rhodes from 1310 until 1522, in Malta from 1530 until 1798, and at St. Petersburg from 1799 until 1801. The Hospitallers arose in the early 12th century, during the time of the Cluniac movement, a Benedictine reform movement. Early in the 11th century, merchants from Amalfi founded a hospital in the Muristan district of Jerusalem, dedicated to John the Baptist, to provide care for sick, poor, or injured pilgrims to the Holy Land. Blessed Gerard became its head in 1080. After the conquest of Jerusalem in 1099 during the First Crusade, a group of crusaders formed a religious order to support the hospital. Some scholars consider that the Amalfitan order and hospital were different from Gerard's order and his hospital. The organization became a military religious order under its own papal charter, charged with the care and defense of the Holy Land. Following the conquest of the Holy Land by Islamic forces, the knights operated from Rhodes, over which they were sovereign, and later from Malta, where they administered a vassal state under the Spanish Viceroy of Sicily. Next, a medieval Teutonic Knight was a member of the Catholic military Duster Orden or Teutonic Order, officially founded in March 1198 CE. The first mission of the Teutonic Knights was to help retake Jerusalem from the Arabs in the Third Crusade, and during this failed attempt they set up a hospital outside Acre during the siege of that city. The hospital was granted the status of an independent military order by the Pope, and the Knights never looked back. The Middle East proved to be too difficult to hold on to, but the ambitious order merely switched their focus to converting Christians and grabbing land in Central and Eastern Europe instead. And lastly, the Order of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem, also known as the Leper Brothers of Jerusalem, or simply as Lazarists, was a Catholic military order founded by Crusaders around 1119 at the Leper Hospital in Jerusalem, Kingdom of Jerusalem, whose care became its original purpose, named after its patron saint, Lazarus. It was recognized by King Fulk of Jerusalem in 1142 and canonically recognized as a hospitaller and military order of chivalry under the rule of Saint Augustine in the papal bull Cum an nobis petitur of Pope Alexander IV in 1255. Although they were centered on their charism of caring for those afflicted with leprosy, the Knights of the Order of St. Lazarus notably fought in the Battle of La Forbie in 1244 and in the defense of Acre in 1291. The titular seat was successively situated at Jerusalem. St. Jean d'Acre, and after the fall of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, split into main branches in Italy and Chateau Royal de Bonne-sur-Bourne in France. So Knights of St. Lazarus cared for those with leprosy and also syphilis and other chronic conditions. During medieval times, there were many religious orders for men in nursing. For example, the Election Brothers organized care for victims of the Black Plague in the 14th century in Germany. In the 19th century, they followed the same traditions as women's religious nursing orders and established hospitals and provided nursing care. The deaconess groups, which had their origins in the Roman Empire of the 3rd and 4th centuries, were suppressed during the Middle Ages by the Western churches. However, these groups of nursing providers resurfaced occasionally throughout the centuries, most notably in 1836, when Theodore Flidner reinstituted the Order of Deaconesses and opened a small hospital and training school in Kaiserswerth, Germany. Florence Nightingale received her training in nursing at the Kaiserswerth School. Deaconess is a woman belonging to an order or sisterhood dedicated to the care of the sick or poor, or who is engaging in other social service duties, as teaching or missionary work. Early religious values, such as self-denial, spiritual calling, and devotion to duty and hard work, have dominated nursing throughout its history. Nurses' commitment to these values often resulted in exploitation and few monetary rewards. For some time, nurses themselves believed it was inappropriate to expect economic gain from their calling. Throughout history, wars have accentuated the need for nurses. These are the wars that have contributed to the nursing history, and also where nurses have contributed, such as the Crimean War, American Civil War, World War I, World War II, and Vietnam War. First, we're going to talk about the Crimean War. The Crimean War, from 1853 to 1856, was a brutal conflict that took its name from the Crimean Peninsula on the Black Sea. The war, which claimed an estimated 650,000 lives, pitted Britain, France, Turkey, and Sardinia against Russia, whose ruler, Tsar Nicholas I, was attempting to expand his influence over the Middle East and the Eastern Mediterranean at the expense of the declining Ottoman Empire. The British and French in turn saw Nicholas' power grab as a danger to their trade routes and were determined to stop him. During the Crimean War, the inadequacy of care given to soldiers led to a public outcry in Great Britain. The role Florence Nightingale played in addressing this problem is well known. She was asked by Sir Sidney Herbert of the British War Department to recruit a contingent of female nurses to provide to the sick and injured in the Crimea. Nightingale and her nurses transformed the military hospitals by setting up sanitation practices such as hand washing and washing clothing regularly. Nightingale is credited with performing miracles. The mortality rate in the Barak Hospital in Turkey, for example, was reduced from 42% to 2% in just 6 months. The Treaty of Paris, signed on March 30, 1856, ended the war. It forbade Russia from basing warships in the Black Sea. The Ottoman vassal states of Wallachia and Moldavia became largely independent. Christians there gained a degree of official equality, and the Orthodox Church regained control of the Christian churches in dispute. Second, the American Civil War. The Civil War in the United States began in 1861, after decades of simmering tensions between the northern and southern states over slavery, states' rights, and westward expansion. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 caused 7 southern states to secede and form the Confederate States of America. Former states soon joined them. The war between the states as a civil war was also known, ended in Confederate surrender in 1865. The conflict was the costliest and deadliest war ever fought on American soil, with some 620,000 of 2.4 million soldiers killed, millions more injured, and much of the South left in ruin. Here's a brief history on the causes of American Civil War. In the mid-19th century, while the United States was experiencing an era of tremendous growth, a fundamental economic difference existed between the country's northern and southern regions. In the north, manufacturing and industry was well established, and agriculture was mostly limited to small-scale farms, while the South's economy was based on a system of large-scale farming that depended on the labor of black enslaved people to grow certain crops, especially cotton and tobacco. Growing abolitionist sentiment in the North after the 1830s and Northern opposition to slavery's expansion into the new Western territories led many Southerners to fear that the existence of slavery in America, and thus the backbone of their economy, was in danger. During the American Civil War, several nurses emerged who were notable for their contributions to a country torn by internal strife. Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth provided care and safety to slaves fleeing to the North on the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman was known as the Moses of her people for her work with the Underground Railroad. During the Civil War, she nursed the sick and suffering of her own race. Sojourner Truth, an abolitionist, Underground Railroad agent, preacher, and women's rights advocate, was a nurse for more than 4 years during the Civil War and worked as a nurse and counselor for the Freedmen's Relief Association after the war. Mother Bickerdike and Clara Barton searched the battlefields and gave care to injured and dying soldiers. Noted authors Walt Whitman and Louisa May Alcott volunteered as nurses to give care to injured soldiers in military hospitals. Another female leader who provided nursing care during the Civil War was Dorothea Dix. She became the Union Superintendent of Female Nurses, responsible for recruiting nurses and supervising the nursing care of all women nurses working in the Army hospitals. So as you can see, I have here some letters that could be your guide to remembering their contributions during the American Civil War. In the Underground Railroad or tunnel, we have Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. In the battlefields, we have Clara Barton and Mary Ann or Mother Bickerdike. From authors to nurses, you can have the small letter T as the end of their names, such as in Walt Whitman and Louisa May Alcott. And for Dorothea Dix, we have Superintendix or Superintendent Dorothea Dix. So here are some of their profiles that I have found in their Wikipedia profiles. So we have here Miss Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. Let's talk about first Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born as Aranuta Ross in March 1822 in Dorchester County, Maryland, U.S. and died on March 10, 1913 at the age of 90 to 91 in Auburn, New York, U.S. She was also called as Minty or Moses. She was a Civil War scout, spy, nurse, suffragist, civil rights activist known for freeing enslaved people. She had been married to John Tubman and after which Nelson Davis. She had one adopted child, Gertie, and her parents were Harriet Queen Ross and Ben Ross. And she took her name as Harriet Tubman from her mother, Harriet. Next, we have Sojourner Truth. She was born as Isabella Bamfrey on 1797 in Swarthmore, New York, United States, and died on November 26, 1883 at the age of 86 on Battle Creek, Michigan, United States. She was an abolitionist, an author, and a human rights activist. Her parents were James Bamfrey and Elizabeth Bamfrey. Next, we're going to talk about those that are in battlefields. They are Clara Barton and Mary Ann Bickerdike. Clara Barton, or Clarissa Harlow Barton, was born on December 25, 1821 in North Oxford, Massachusetts, U.S. and died on April 12, 1912 at the age of 90 in Glen Echo, Maryland, U.S. She was a nurse, humanitarian, founder and first president of the American Red Cross. And one of her cousins is Elvira Stone. Next, we have Mary Ann Bickerdike. She was born as Mary Ann Ball. She was born on July 19, 1817 in Ohio and died on November 8, 1901 at the age of 84 in Kansas. She was the wife of Robert Bickerdike and they had 2 sons. She was also a lawyer and an advocate for veterans. Next is we have the authors turned to nurses, Walt Whitman and Louisa May Alcott. Walt Whitman or Walter Whitman was born on May 31, 1819 in New York, U.S. and died on March 26, 1892 at the age of 72 in New Jersey. He was a poet, an essayist, and a journalist. Next, we have Louisa May Alcott. She was born on November 29, 1832 in Pennsylvania and died on March 6, 1888 at the age of 55 in Massachusetts. She was a novelist and her pen name was A.M. Barnard. Some of her notable works are Little Women, Little Men, Joe's Boys, and 8 Cousins. And lastly, we have Dorothea Dix. Dorothea Dix or Dorothea Lynn Dix was born on April 4, 1802 in Maine, U.S. and died on July 17, 1887 at the age of 85 in New Jersey. She was a social reformer and her parents were Joseph Dix and Mary Bigelow. You can learn more about their profile on their Wikipedia pages. Third on the list was the World War I. World War I, also known as the Great War, began in 1914 after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. His murder catapulted into a war across Europe that lasted until 1918. During the conflict, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire, also known as the Central Powers, fought against Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, Japan, and the United States, also known as the Allied Powers. Thanks to new military technologies and the horrors of trench warfare, World War I saw unprecedented levels of carnage and destruction. By the time the war was over, the Allied powers claimed victory. More than 60 million people, soldiers, and civilians alike were dead. The arrival of World War I resulted in American, British, and French women rushing to volunteer their nursing services. These nurses endured harsh environments and treated injuries not seen before. A monument entitled The Spirit of Nursing stands in Arlington National Cemetery. It honors the nurses who served in the U.S. Armed Services in World War I, many of whom are buried in Section 21, which is also called as a nurses section. Progress in healthcare occurred during World War I, particularly in the field of surgery. For example, advancements were made in the use of anesthetic agents, infection control, blood typing, and prosthetics. Fourth on the list is the World War II. World War II, the Second World War, often abbreviated as World War II, was a global war that lasted from 1939 to 1945. It involved the vast majority of the world's countries, including all of the great powers, forming two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis powers. The instability created in Europe by the First World War set the stage for another international conflict, the World War II, which broke out 2 decades later and would prove even more devastating. Rising to power in an economically and politically unstable Germany, Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi Party, rearmed the nation and signed strategic treaties with Italy and Japan to further his ambitions of world domination. Hitler's invasion of Poland in September 1939 drove Great Britain and France to declare war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. Over the next 6 years, the conflict would take more lives and destroy more land and property around the globe than any previous war. Among the estimated 45 to 60 million people killed were 6 million Jews murdered in Nazi concentration camps as part of Hitler's diabolical final solution, now known as the Holocaust. The legacy of the war will include the spread of communism from the Soviet Union into Eastern Europe as well as its eventual triumph in China, and the global shift in power from Europe to two rival superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, that would soon face off against each other in the Cold War. World War II casualties created an acute shortage of caregivers, and the Cadet Nurse Corps was established in response to a marked shortage of nurses. Also at that time, auxiliary healthcare workers became prominent. Practical nurses, aides, and technicians provided much of the actual nursing care under the instruction and supervision of better prepared nurses. Medical specialties also arose at that time to meet the needs of hospitalized clients. Last on the list is the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a long, costly, and divisive conflict that pitted the communist government of North Vietnam against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The conflict was intensified by the ongoing Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. More than 3 million people, including over 58,000 Americans, were killed in the Vietnam War, and more than half of the dead were Vietnamese civilians. Opposition to the war in the United States bitterly divided Americans, even after President Richard Nixon signed the Paris Peace Accords and ordered the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 1973. Communist forces ended the war by seizing control of South Vietnam in 1975, and the country was unified as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam the following year. During the Vietnam War, approximately 11,000 American military women stationed in Vietnam were nurses. Most of them volunteered to go to Vietnam right after they graduated from nursing school, making them the youngest group of medical personnel ever to serve in wartime. Near the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the wall stands the Vietnam Women's Memorial. So you can remember the Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation by Young Vietnam, Young for the youngest group and Vietnam for their foundation. Now we go to the societal attitudes toward nurses. Society's attitudes about nurses and nursing has significantly influenced professional nursing. Here we're going to talk about the societal attitudes before mid-1800s, during 1800s, during 1990s, and 2002. Before the mid 1800s, nursing was without organization, education, or social status. The prevailing attitude was that a woman's place was in the home and that no respectable woman should have a career. The role for Victorian middle class women was that of wife and mother, and any education she obtained was for the purpose of making her a pleasant companion to her husband and responsible mother to her children. Nurses in hospitals during this period were poorly educated. Some were even incarcerated criminals. Society's attitudes towards nursing during this period are reflected in the writings of Charles Dickens. In his book, Martin Chuzzlewit in 1896, Dickens reflected his attitude towards nurses through her character, Sari Gump. Sari Gump, as per Charles Dickens, she cared for the sick by neglecting them, stealing from them, and physically abusing them. This literary portrayal of nurses greatly influenced the negative image and attitude toward nurses up to contemporary times. In contrast, the guardian angel or angel of mercy image arose in the latter part of the 19th century, largely because of the work of Florence Nightingale during the Crimean War. After Nightingale brought respectability to the nursing profession, nurses were viewed as noble, compassionate, moral, religious, dedicated, and self-sacrificing. Another image arising in the early 19th century that has affected subsequent generations of nurses and the public and other professionals working with nurses is the image of doctor's handmaiden. This image evolved when women had yet obtained the right to vote, when family structures were largely paternalistic, and when the medical profession portrayed increasing use of scientific knowledge that at that time was viewed as a male domain. Since that time, several images of nursing have been portrayed. The heroine portrayal evolved from nurses' acts of bravery in World War II and their contributions in fighting poliomyelitis, in particular the work of the Australian nurse Elizabeth Kenny. Her method, promoted internationally while working in Australia, Europe, and the United States, differed from the conventional one of placing affected limbs in plaster casts. Instead, she applied hot compress, followed by passive movement of the areas to reduce what she called spasm. Her principles of massive rehabilitation became the foundation of physical therapy or physiotherapy in such cases. Other images in the late 1900s include the nurse as sex object, surrogate mother, and tyrannical mother. During the past few decades, the nursing profession has taken steps to improve the image of the nurse. In the early 1990s, the Tri-Council for Nursing, the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, the American Nurses Association, the American Organization of Nurse Executives, and the National League for Nursing initiated a national effort titled Nurses of America to improve the image of nursing. Launched in 2002, the Johnson & Johnson Corporation continues their campaign for nursing's future to promote nursing as a positive career choice. Through various outreach programs, this campaign increases exposure to the nursing profession, raises awareness about its challenges, such as nursing shortage, and encourages people of all ages to consider a career in nursing. In this section, now we're going to talk about the nursing leaders. First, we're going to talk about Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale was born on May 12, 1820, in Florence, Grand Duchy of Tuscany, Italy. She died on August 13, 1910, at the age of 90 in England, UK. She was a British, known for pioneering modern nursing and polar area diagram. Her fields focused on hospital hygiene, sanitation, and statistics. The contributions of Florence Nightingale to nursing are well documented. Her achievements in improving the standards for the care of war casualties in the Crimea earned her the title Lady with a Lamp. She was known as the Lady with a Lamp because during her rounds on the soldiers during the Crimean War, she always has a lamp with her, and so that she could look at the injured soldiers more clearly and ask for how their recovery was going on. Her efforts in reforming hospitals and in introducing and implementing public health policies also made her an accomplished political nurse. She was the first nurse to exert political pressure on the government. She asked for the government to increase the funds on caring for the soldiers and establishing more hospitals. Through her contributions to nursing education, perhaps her greatest achievement, she is also recognized as nursing's first scientist theories for her work Notes on Nursing, What It Is and What It Is Not. In this publication, she wrote her observations on the soldiers during the Crimean War and how the environment greatly affected their recovery. Nightingale was born to a wealthy and intellectual family. She believed she was called by God to help others to improve the well-being of mankind. She was determined to become a nurse in spite of opposition from her family and the restrictive societal code for affluent young English women. As a well-traveled young woman of the day, she visited Kaiserswerth in 1847, where she received 3 months training in nursing. In 1853, she studied in Paris with the Sisters of Charity, after which she returned to England to assume the position of superintendent of a charity hospital for ill governesses. When she returned to England from the Crimea, a grateful English public gave Nightingale an honorarium of £4,500. She later used this money to develop the Nightingale Training School for Nurses, which opened in 1860. The school served as a model for other training schools. Its graduates traveled to other countries to manage hospitals and institute nurse training programs. Despite poor health that left her an invalid, Florence Nightingale worked tirelessly until her death at the age of 90. As a passionate statistician, she conducted extensive research and analysis. Nightingale is often referred to as the first nurse researcher. For example, her record-keeping proved that her interventions dramatically reduced mortality rates among soldiers during the Crimean War. Nightingale's vision of nursing changed society's view of nursing. She believed in personalized and holistic client care. Her vision also included public health and health promotion roles for nurses. It is easy to see how Florence Nightingale still serves as a model for nurses today. You can learn more about her on this links that I've provided here, Wikipedia, and also some videos on YouTube in this title and links. Next nursing leader we're going to talk about is Miss Clara Barton. We have known her previously on her contributions during the American Civil War. Clara Barton was a school teacher who volunteered as a nurse during the American Civil War. Her responsibility was to organize the nursing services. Barton is noted for her role in establishing the American Red Cross, which linked with the International Red Cross when the U.S. Congress ratified the Treaty of Geneva, the Geneva Convention. Geneva Convention are the basic rights of wartime prisoners, protection for the wounded and sick, protection for the civilians in and around a war zone. It was Barton who persuaded Congress in 1882 to ratify this treaty so that the Red Cross could perform humanitarian efforts in time of peace. For Clara Barton, remember, Teacher Clara's Red Cross, because she was a teacher before she was a nurse, and she established the American Red Cross. Or you could remember ABC. A for Angel, because she was called as the Angel of Battlefield during the American Civil War, and Cross for establishing American Red Cross. Next, we have Linda Richards. Linda Richards, also known as Melinda Ann Judson Richards, was born on July 27, 1841 in New York and died on April 16, 1930 at the age of 88 on Massachusetts. She was trained on New England Hospital for Women and Children, and she was known for pioneering modern nursing in the United States. Linda Richards was America's first trained nurse. She graduated from the New England Hospital for Women and Children in 1873. Richards is known for introducing nurses' notes and doctors' orders. She also initiated the practice of nurses wearing uniforms. She is credited for her pioneering work in psychiatric and industrial nursing. So, you can remember Miss Linda Richards as Trainer Linda's Notes and Uniform. Trainer because she was America's first trained nurse, Notes because she introduced nurses' notes, and Uniform because she initiated nurses wearing uniform. Next is we're going to talk about Mary Mahoney. Mary Eliza Mahoney was born on May 7, 1845 in Massachusetts and died on January 4, 1926 at the age of 80, also in Massachusetts. She's an American. Her alma mater was on New England Hospital for Women and Children, and she was known for being the first African American woman to complete nurses training in the United States. Mary Mahoney was the first African American professional nurse. She graduated from the New England Hospital for Women and Children in 1879. She constantly worked for the acceptance of African Americans in nursing and for the promotion of equal opportunities. The American Nurses Association gives a Mary Mahoney Award biannually in recognition of significant contributions in interracial relationships. Remember African American Mahoney. Mahoney is the first African American professional nurse. Next is we have Miss Lillian Wald. Lillian Wald was born on March 10, 1867 in Ohio, US, and died on September 1, 1940 at the age of 73 in Connecticut. Her alma mater was also a New York hospital training school for nurses. She was a nurse, humanitarian, and an activist. She was known for founding the Henry Street Settlement, nursing pioneer, and advocacy for the poor. Lillian Wald is considered the founder of public health nursing. Wald and Mary Brewster were the first to offer trained nursing services to the poor in the New York slums. Their home among the poor on the upper floor of a tenement called the Henry Street Settlement and visiting nurse service provided nursing services, social services, and organized educational and cultural activities. Soon after the founding of the Henry Street Settlement, school nursing was established as an adjunct to its visiting nurse. Remember, public ward. So instead of public ward, you can remember public ward, ward for Lillian Wald, and public because she is the founder of public health nursing. Next is we have Lavinia Dock. Lavinia Dock, or Lavinia Lloyd Dock, was born on February 26, 1858 in Pennsylvania and died on April 17, 1956 at the age of 98, also in Pennsylvania. She's an American, and her alma mater was on Bellevue Hospital School of Nursing. She was a nurse, an educator, and an author. Lavinia Dock was a feminist, prolific writer, political activist, suffragette, and a friend of Lillian Wald. She participated in protest movements for women's rights that resulted in the 1920 passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which granted women the right to vote. In addition, Dock campaigned for legislation to allow nurses, rather than physicians, to control their profession. In 1893, Dock, with the assistance of Mary Adelaide Nutting and Isabel Hampton Robb, founded the American Society of Superintendents of Training Schools for Nurses of the United States, a precursor to the current National League for Nursing. So for Lavinia Dock, remember, protester Lavinia. Lavinia Dock is an active protester for women's rights that led to the passage of the 9th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, where it allowed the women's right to vote. Next is we have Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger, or Margaret Lewis Higgins, was born on September 14, 1879 in New York and died on September 6, 1966 at the age of 86 in Arizona. She was a social reformer, a sex educator, a writer, and a nurse. She was married to William Sanger and then later on to James Noah Lee. She had 3 children, and her sister is Ethel Young. Margaret Higgins Sanger, a public health nurse in New York, has had a lasting impact on women's healthcare. She was imprisoned for opening the first birth control information clinic in America. She is considered the founder of Planned Parenthood. Her experience with the large number of unwanted pregnancies among the working poor was instrumental in addressing this problem. So remember Mama Marga, because Margaret Sanger is the founder of Planned Parenthood. Next is we have Mary Breckinridge. Mary Breckinridge was born on February 17, 1881 in Tennessee and died on May 16, 1965 at the age of 84 in Kentucky. She was known for founding the Frontier Nursing Service. She was married first to Henry Ruffner Morrison and then later on to Richard Ryan Thompson. She was a nurse and a midwife. After World War I, Mary Breckinridge, a notable pioneer nurse, established the Frontier Nursing Service. It provided comprehensive family medical care to the mountain people of the rural Kentucky. FNS served remote and impoverished areas of the road and rail system, but accessible by horseback. She modeled her services on European practices and sought to professionalize American nurse midwives to practice autonomously in homes and decentralized clinics. In 1918, she worked with the American Committee for Devastated Friends, distributing food, clothing, and supplies to rural villages and taking care of sick children. In 1921, Breckinridge returned to the United States with plans to provide health care to the people of rural America. In 1925, Breckinridge and 2 other nurses began the FNS in Leslie County, Kentucky. Within this organization, Breckinridge started one of the first midwifery training schools in the United States. So for Mary Breckinridge, you can remember Front Mid Ridge. Ridge, or Mary Breckinridge, front for establishing Frontier Nursing Service, and mid because she's also a midwife. Okay, so as a summary for the nursing leaders, here are the phrases or words that you can use to remember their nursing contributions. First, we have Teacher Clara's Red Cross or Angel Battlefield Cross. This is for Clara Barton. She was a teacher turned to nurse, and she established the American Red Cross. Also, you can remember ABC for Angel of Battlefield because she was considered the Angel of Battlefield during the American Civil War, as well as the cross for establishing the American Red Cross. Next is we have Trainer Linda's Notes on Uniform. So Linda Richards is the first professionally trained nurse of America. She introduced nurses' notes and initiated the wearing of the nurses' uniform. Third is African American Mahoney. Mary Mahoney is the first African American professional nurse. Fourth is Public Wald for Lillian Wald. She established the public health nursing. Fifth is Protester Lavinia. Lavinia Dock is a protester which is active in women's rights for the amendment of the U.S. Constitution to allow the women to have a right to vote. Next is we have Mama Marga. This is for Margaret Sanger. She is the founder of Planned Parenthood, hence the Mama. And lastly, we have Front Mid Ridge. This is for Mary Brooklyn Ridge, who established the Frontier Nursing Service and is also a midwife who established one of the first midwifery training schools. Now we go to the men in nursing. Men have worked as nurses as far back as before the Crusades. Although the history of nursing primarily focuses on the female figures in nursing, schools of nursing for men existed in the United States from the late 1880s until 1969. Male nurses were denied admission to the military nurse corps during World War II based on gender. It was believed at that time that nursing was women's work and combat was men's work. During the 20th century, men were denied admission to most nursing programs. The American Nurses Association denied membership to male nurses until 1930, and men's state nursing associations did not allow men to join until the 1950s. In this section, we have two male nurses that made remarkable contributions for the further acceptance of men in nursing. In 1971, a nurse who practiced in Michigan named Steve Miller formed an organization called Men in Nursing. In 1974, Luther Chrisman organized a group of male nurses in Chicago. Luther Chrisman, one of the founders of the AAMN, graduated from the Pennsylvania Hospital School of Nursing for Men in 1939 and did experience discrimination while in nursing school. For example, he was not allowed a maternity clinical experience, yet was expected to know the information related to that clinical experience for the licensing exam. After becoming licensed, he wanted to earn a baccalaureate degree in nursing, but was denied access to two universities because of gender. After receiving his doctorate, he accepted the position as Dean of Nursing at the Vanderbilt University. He was the first man to be a dean at the University School of Nursing. He accomplished many firsts: the first man nominated for president of the American Nurses Association, the first man elected to the American Academy of Nursing, who was named a living legend by this organization, and the first man inducted into A&E's Hall of Fame for his extraordinary contributions to nursing. So remember, Miller Michigan Men in Nursing for Steve Miller. He formed the Men in Nursing. And Chrisman, first man for Luther Chrisman, because he was the first of the many in nursing's history. The two groups were organized into the National Male Nurses Association with the primary focus of recruiting more men into nursing. In 1981, the organization was renamed the American Assembly for Men in Nursing. The purpose of the AAMN is to provide a framework for nurses as a group to meet to discuss and influence factors that affect men as nurses. In 2009 and 2010, members of the AAMN discussed ways to change the image of men in nursing in both recruitment and retention. They subsequently introduced the theme, Do What You Love and You Love What You Do. This idea led to the AAMN initiative 20 by 20 Choose Nursing, which has the goal of increasing the enrollment of men in nursing programs nationally from the current 10% to 20% by 2020. Additionally, here are the barriers of men to becoming nurses: image of femininity, lack of male role models, suspicion surrounding intimate touch. Okay, so as a summary of what we have discussed today, here are the included in the historical perspectives. We discussed about the women's roles traditionally. In religion, we discussed about the three knights, the Knights Hospitallers, the Teutonic Knights, and the Knights of St. Lazarus, which help in the treatment of those with leprosy and other skin conditions. Election Brothers help in the management of those with sick with the Black Plague. And the Order of Deaconesses, which was organized by Theodor Fliedner and then established the Kaiserswerth School in Germany, in which Florence Nightingale was professionally trained as a nurse. We also discussed about the different wars. The first is the Crimean War. In Crimean War, we discussed about Sidney Herbert, who recruited Florence Nightingale to recruit more nurses to help during the war. They also helped in decreasing the mortality rate from 42% to 2%. In American Civil War, we have notable pioneers in nursing. We discussed about those that were active in the Underground Railroad or Underground Tunnel, namely Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. For letter B, those in the battlefields, Clara Barton and Mother Bickerdike. Small letter P, for the authors turned to nurses, namely Walt Whitman and Louisa May Alcott. And lastly, superintendents, for Dorothea Dix, who became the Union Superintendent for Female Nurses. Then during the World War I, there was a monument that was called the Spirit of Nursing for those nurses that sacrificed and helped during the World War I. In World War II, we had the short cadet for those included in the Cadet Nurse Corps for the shortage of nurses. In Vietnam War, we have the Young Vietnam. These are the Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation for the youngest medical group who served in the wartime. We also discussed about the different societal attitudes towards nursing. Before mid-1800s, we have the image of Sari Gump, which is a negative image of nurses. In 18th century, we were called as Angel of Mercy or the Guardian Angel due to the contributions of Florence Nightingale during the Crimean War. In 19th century, we have Nurses of America, which is the initiative of the Tri-Council of Nursing to enhance the image of nursing. And in 20th century, we have the Campaign for Nurses that was initiated by the Johnson & Johnson Foundation to recruit more nurses. We also discussed about the different nursing leaders such as Florence Nightingale, Teacher Clara Swag Ross, Trainer Linda Snows in Uniform, African-American Mahoney, Public World, Professor Lavinia, Mama Margaret, and Frank Midridge. And lastly, we discussed about the men in nursing. Those reasons wherein they were denied admission to nursing, Miller, Michigan men, Steve Miller, which is a nurse in Michigan, established men in nursing. Chrisman First Man, Luther Chrisman is the first man of the many as contributions in nursing. They established the AMN and with the initiative of 20 by 20 Choose Nursing. And also, the